basically pure zeolite. And of course compost is the thing you will never have too much of. The thing that products like your lava sand and like your zeolite do is they are what we call, they have a high cation exchange capacity. Now you don't have to remember that word, but you need to know what it means. We use strictly organic fertilizers in the garden for a number of reasons. Chemical fertilizers, they do a lot of bad things. They kill off a lot of the beneficial life that's in the soil. One of the most critical things about them is that they are in a form that does not bind to the soil. When you put a chemical fertilizer on your garden or on your lawn or on your flower beds or whatever, your plants are probably going to get 10% of the nutrients that are in there. The rest of the nutrients are going to wash away, wash into the rivers and streams and on out into the Gulf, where they cause tremendous problems. And this is because, I'll give you a real quick reason why it happens, in that everybody remembers from your basic biology, chemistry, physics, whatever, that like charges repel. Positive repels positive, negative repels negative. Dislike charges or unlike charges attract. You put a negative and a positive together and they lock up together. Everybody's taken those magnets when you were a kid. You turn them the wrong way and you can't push them together. They keep pushing apart, but you turn them around the right way and they just lock together. That's when you have negative matched to positive and things lock up very tightly. Well, in chemical fertilizers, virtually all the nutrient is in a form that has a negative charge to it. We call it an anion. It's phosphates, it's nitrates, it's nitrites. Our soils, especially soils that have clay in them, also have a negative charge to the soil. So when you put a chemical fertilizer with a negative charge on top of a clay soil that has a negative charge to it, the nutrients don't stay in place. Most of them wash away, and maybe your plants grab a little bit as they go by. When you put an organic fertilizer on, you're getting things that have a positive charge. They're called cations. They are mainly ammoniacal products. So when you put an organic fertilizer on the soil, it locks up with the soil and it stays there until the plants are ready to use it. And the plant has a miraculous mechanism by which it can release a stronger positive charge, breaks the fertilizer particle free, and then the plants can absorb it and use it. Those particles are called cations, and things like lava sand and zeolite and even some of the things you'll find in compost, they have a great ability to pick up and hold and release and pick up and hold and release. And these things just do a really good job of holding the fertilizer in the soil until the plants are ready to use it. Now, just one second, I'll get your question. If you haven't discovered Bruce Dooley on Saturday afternoons on KTSA, turn him on sometime at 5 o'clock. He'll scare the heck out of you. He shows all about the environment. But we'll get Bruce over here to do a seminar sometime. One of the biggest characters in the world. But he talks a lot about things like the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, where the Mississippi River empties into the Gulf of Mexico. There is an area that is totally devoid of life. No oysters, no shrimp, no crabs, no fish. That's bigger than several New England states. What is that from? That's from all the chemical fertilizers washing down the Mississippi River. Now that more and more developing countries are using more and more chemical fertilizers, they're finding dead zones at virtually every place that a river empties into the ocean. You don't want to do that. Use the organic fertilizers, and I've had this argument with a lot of people, including the people who are going to build a PGA village back when it was first proposed, saying, "No, we can't use organic fertilizers, they pollute too much." Exactly the opposite is true. Chemical fertilizers pollute a great deal more than organic fertilizers. So if you use your good organic fertilizers, you don't have to use them very often. I typically, like I say, will put the organic fertilizer down before I'm ready to plant. Sometimes that's the only fertilizer the plants get all year, or all season at least. I usually try to go back and follow up with a little bit of liquid fertilizer every now and then, but hang around this place very long, you realize it's a pretty busy life when you're in the nursery business. And again, if you're using chemicals, you need to be using them all the time. The organics, once you get your soil in good shape, then you may get by with only one application of fertilizer a year, although you probably will do better if you add a little bit more through the growing season. So we want good fertilizer. We want all the organic material we can find. If you have bad soil to start with, you can amend the soil with compost, which puts a lot of organic material into the soil. But the main thing that builds organic material is microbial life in the soil. Bacteria. We stimulate bacteria with things like molasses and a few other things. So molasses is something else we may want to use periodically. Your question, sir?
Yes, about the green sand, if you're using it when you plant your tomatoes, should you put a handful of it down in the hole along with the rock phosphate and all that, or should you just sprinkle it around the top?
Probably just sprinkle it around the top. It's not something that gets locked up. It is non-burning, non-polluting, so water on your normal schedule. But everything I tell you about today will be non-polluting and non-burning, and there is no rush to water it in. Again, that's the nice thing about organics. There is no sudden water uptake, there's no rush to water, there's no worry about burning. Also, I'm not real big on measuring. If you ask me how much fertilizer I put under a tomato plant, it's about a Starbucks cup full. It's about this much. If you ask me how much Epsom salts, and we'll talk about Epsom salts to stop blossom end rot in just a minute, it's a good handful. You don't have to be so careful on timing, you don't have to be so careful on exact amounts, and you certainly don't have to rush to water. So everything we do is organic for a lot of different reasons. Now, again, the main things for that soil are good fertility. If you're lacking in iron and things have a tendency to have yellow growth on the new growth, probably add some iron, usually in the form of green sand. You also may get what are called Medina micronutrients, but they're real hard to get right now because of a licensing issue, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. But get the soil in good shape. And the soil just gets better year after year after year. Anybody putting in a raised bed and bringing additional soil in? Okay, don't get discouraged the first year, because all of the soils that you buy, and I have to tell you in order, if I'm going to tell you who has the best soil, it's going to be New Earth is probably best, Fertile Garden Supply is probably next best, and Gardenville is probably the bottom of the list on my list, and then Keller Materials somewhere down in the basement when it comes to good soils. But all these soils will be better the second year than they are the first year, will be better the third year. I think the reason is that in many cases the compost that goes into it is not fully finished, and if you are bringing in fresh soil, use twice as much fertilizer as you would otherwise, and you'll do much better job. But I have not found a soil that I would say is absolutely great when you first buy it from anybody, no matter how much it costs. Yes, ma'am.
Soil list.
I like New Earth. New Earth you can buy from them, or I buy their soils from Stone and Soil Depot. A number of different places carry New Earth. Fertile Garden Supply makes a pretty good soil. Gardenville has been highly variable since Malcolm's not running the operation anymore. You may get good soil one day. The soil we bought from them that went into some of our flower beds here turned to rock, and I've been totally displeased with it.
Mine too.
And everything I've ever bought from Keller was full of weeds, so I'm not going to recommend that to you as highly. Yes, sir.
If the garden's already in, and you want to top dress it, Medina.
Pure compost. Compost. If you want to top dress with anything in the way of a physical material compost, and for fertilizer, I just use the Medina granular.
And that's my question. If
Yeah.
you put Medina on top, you need to cultivate it in, or can you just water it?
No, no. I just put it on top and water.
Okay.
Now, if I'm going to add fertilizer and compost, I'll put the fertilizer down first and put the compost on top of it, because all fertilizers have to be acted upon by soil microbes to be converted into a form that the plants use. And when you put your compost on top of your fertilizer becomes available a whole lot more quickly. But I am not big on tilling for any reason. I have a Troy-built tiller, one of those $1,000 tillers sitting in my shed that I haven't fired that thing up in 5 or 6 years, because I find that every time you till, you do two bad things. The good thing is you may loosen the soil. But the bad thing is you will bring up weed seeds that have been lying there for 50 years that couldn't germinate because they were below the surface. If you want to have weeds, you till your soil, and you will have brought up a ton of seed that suddenly will germinate. The second reason is that, as I say, organic material is critically important to our soils for plants to grow well. When it's in the ground, if we're not breaking it down with chemical fertilizers and things, it tends to build and get better and better and better every year. If we bring that material up on the surface, a lot of it can oxidize, turn into carbon dioxide and water, and go away. One of the biggest problems we face, everybody hears about global warming, everybody hears about the increase in carbon dioxide and all. Well, part of it is from burning our gasoline and things like that, but a large part of it is, you know, the farmers in the Midwest and all, where they plow millions and millions of acres, they're destroying the organic material in the soil, both through chemical fertilizers, but they're bringing it up on the surface. It's turning to carbon dioxide, and if people would go to what we call